Historian and Nadinath Das Babaji Maharaj. My name is Chintamani Devi Dasi with the Real Yoga Mission channel here on YouTube, and we're really excited to announce this week's topic, Receiving the Shock of God. Thank you so much for being with us today, Nadinath.
Thank you, Chintamani Devi. I'm really glad to be here today, and welcome to all our friends and regular members that have been showing up weekly. We sure appreciate it, and very nice to see you again. We've got a very special class today, which I'll get into. First of all, I want to offer my humble obeisances to all of you, and you're obviously very special divine beings for having any interest beyond this world that everybody's so fascinated by, but you have interest in these topics. So I offer my humble obeisance to you in the name of Lord Hari. We are servants of Lord Hari here, which I'll talk about in a little bit here, but the first thing I want to do is just let you know that I'm following the lineage of my Guru Dev here, which is a very ancient lineage, and we humbly follow that. I'm not qualified really to speak on these topics and everything, but as people that reincarnated as human beings, we do have the opportunity to manifest what the Lord wants to reveal through us. So with that in mind, I'm just saying I thank you so much for attending, and please accept my humble obeisance and all glories in the divine save of Lord Hari. You can watch my previous two videos, our two previous classes, particularly the first one, Lord Chaitanya's Secret Coming to America. Very good starter class for what we teach here in the room. Now, I want to make a little disclaimer here before we start our today's class called Receiving the Shock of God. And that is simply that everything presented here today is meant to assist you in making real, genuine, tangible advancement in this teaching. I am assuming that those who are attending are interested in that, at least that interested, as perhaps myself has been for 44 years or so, 45, I forget, you know how it is, of practicing this teaching intensely every day. Now, just remember, there is no intention necessarily of creating any kind of shock or any kind of upset or anything in any person. Nothing I say here is a judgment of any person, place, or thing. It is simply the revelation of the shock of God, which only comes to a few people. Now, you may know that out of thousands, the Lord Hari says, out of thousands of practitioners, hardly one knows me in truth. This is a conclusion after verse he gives, talking about the different levels. But he also says, the yogi is illuminated within, his realization within. I'm paraphrasing it for our modern language. His life is within and everything. So this is really it. And only when the heart lives completely for Lord Hari is there peace in one's life. When the only dream and hope and reason for living, working, having fun, eating, playing, partying, and indeed breathing is just to feel the joy of Lord Hari's happiness by one's existence. In other words, our happiness, when you become connected with Lord Hari at that level, becomes his happiness. At that point, the real dream is fulfilled. When one sees all of life's moments, events, lessons, everything as the mercy and direct teachings of Lord Hari on how to adjust, change, and guide one's life, then there is deep inner meaning and fulfillment. One really surrenders their life at the lotus feet, the divine lotus feet of Lord Hari, of God. Then they won't care about anything but the moments in communion with the beloved. Then they will recognize, the Lord will recognize that devotee's condition. In other words, when you enter that condition, the Lord himself will recognize your condition and say, this person really wants communion with me. He will then allow them to receive the shock of God. That's what we're going to talk about today. That's the initial stage. He'll allow them to receive the shock of God and then die to live, as my Guru Maharaj used to say, die to live, which means at that point, when they die to live, they will move into the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram. Sundaram means beautiful, means the beautiful graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda, which means knowledge, eternity, and bliss. It's actually the Virat Rupa of Lord Hari, the Sat Chit Ananda. It's a name of God. I refer to it as the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram. This is the transition location, the transition location for continued deeper communion on their way back to Godhead. This is what I mean by the shock of God. This is the beginning of it. This statement I just made should present itself to you as a shock of God. When one dies to live, which is what Srila Sridhar Maharaj told us all, he was talking from a very high advanced level of advanced age as a divine human being, but he was talking about something that is most important in this practice, and we tend to forget it because we're so busy multitasking all the time. This technology and all this stuff has enveloped our lives and wrapped us up in this illusion, and it's very hard to get clear on how we're going to have to learn how to receive the shock of God and die to live, and what that means. What plan on talking about that today, and I'll make it as brief as possible, but it'll take us probably a good hour to cover all the material I got, and you're going to love what I'm going to show you. So this class, Receiving the Shock of God, let me just give a little bit of a disclaimer here. This is for more advanced yogic Vaishnav practitioners. It was designed for them by me, and primarily anyone can benefit by watching this, but it is designed for advanced practitioners. And I defined advanced practitioner as someone who has daily been practicing yoga, bhakti yoga, the combined of those two, which is the original ancient teaching, bhakti and yoga, according to Patanjali. The whole premise, which he says right from the beginning, is Ishvara Pranidhan, meditation, concentration, surrender to Ishvara, which is the Lord Hari. So it is basically for those who've been practicing yoga and bhakti for at least 10 years every day, not just dibble dabbling and, you know, going out and doing all kinds of other stuff and then showing up and going to a bhakti festival or going to a temple and eating the delicious food and yeah, rah, rah, oh, I love this teaching. Well, we're not talking really for those, although we respect anybody who's spoken the name Hari even once it's crossed their tongue. Still, I'm making a point and just a little disclaimer that this is for advanced practitioners, this class. This is meant to awaken practitioners who maybe be stuck in the disease of casualness, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I don't mean bodily exercise, yoga postures, anything. This is not yoga. This is what has been the false definition has come later. But the deeper practice, which originated with Lord Shiva, was passed on through Matsyendranath, Avadhut, and then onto Gorakhsanath Siddha. This is the lineage, and it came down 700-800 years ago through Gorakhsas, through the Siddha path, through the lineage of how it came to America through our beloved Krishnamacharya. Krishnamacharya was the one, everyone knows that, in Mysore. He was given facility by a king and he started teaching it in India, because even back then, this was long ago, 50, 60 years ago, even then the Indian people weren't interested in yoga, just like they aren't today. It's only the Americans standing in all these postures and going to these classes, oh, yoga, yoga this, yoga that. The Indians don't practice yoga, and even the even the sages don't practice hatha yoga. So that's kind of an illusion of the current environment. But we're talking about a different type of practitioner. So that's my disclaimer. I just want you to know that. By the way, this class does come with a free gift. So if you like the class or you don't like it, either way, and you make some commentary, but still you'd like to receive our free gift, which is a book called Jagat Prabhu, which I produced for you. It's a hard copy, good old-fashioned hard copy, which if you make a comment on the site here, Chintamani will get in touch with you. We'll get a hard mailing address from you and we'll send it out to you. Good old-fashioned slow mail. You'll really like it. Something you can hold in your hands and look at and read and study and really get into the things I tell you today and go over with you. So again, thank you so much for joining with us. I appreciate it very much. Now, remember, first of all, in getting started here, the shock of God has nothing to do with any particular practice, religion, faith, or anything. Now, myself, I come in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is a very ancient line, but he lived during the period of the late 1400s to 1533. He passed away according to the history. And I'll be going over that a little bit today. It's not a history class, but this is a sadhana class for advanced practitioners. From that line also, I took initiation in the line of the Narasingha Babajis in Jagannath Puri. And this was after my Guru Maharaj had passed away. And this is an accepted practice. It wasn't a practice away from the lineage, but an enhancement or deepening the intensement of involvement. And this is also a good question you can ask yourself every day. Asking yourself, what is my intensity of involvement right now in this moment as I'm doing my meditation, my Harinam Japa practice, which is something which was primarily taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He used kirtan to distribute the teaching, but it wasn't his primary teaching. His main teaching for the majority of sadhaks was the daily chanting of 1 lakh of Harinam Japa, which is 100,000 names, which is about 64 rounds to 92 rounds a day. And this is what he said: we're not yogis, we're not going to sit in silent meditation, although we do that too. And especially in the lineage of Narasingha Babas, that's prevalent. But even in the other lineages of Vaishnav lineages, namely Ramanujacharya, Vallabhacharya, Nimbarkacharya, Madhvacharya, the emphasis is not on japa, although it's done, but Lord Chaitanya particularly gave a very strong emphasis on japa, and secondary to that, to the kirtan, which has become more famous. The reason is because with japa, you're going 108% within, and you're chanting and concentrating on the holy name. And when you saturate your life with the Harinam Japa, and I mean saturate, if you're doing 32 to 62, 4 rounds a day, 48 rounds is in the middle of that, you're really saturating your life very much. Now, I never talked much about this. I never hardly told anybody, but I'm starting to come out now because as the body ages and the container gets older, I want to make sure that this information is out there. So yes, it's a fact. I've been chanting 32 rounds every day for almost 44 years. And it's actually the highlight of my day. Every time I get up and start doing anything, it becomes a habit, but it's not a boring habit like doing a weight loss programming or an exercise program. Oh, I got to get down to the gym. It's not like that. The first thing to receive the shock of God is we have to lift you out of the mundane way of thinking into the divine way. Even if you've been a devotee for a while, odds are you've slipped into various forms of what I call the disease of casualness. We do this all the time. We become casual with the people we love, the people we care about. Oh, yeah, same old routine. Oh, hi, Mom. How you doing? We forget about people we love and care about, whether it's family or just, extended family that we've met through this practice in association with the devotees. But we keep pretending that life is permanent. And in our youthful illusion, we get so many exuberance about many things. And many started this practice as very young people under His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we were all very, very young at the time. I know I was very young. And some were taking sannyas, which, the mission had to go on. But to enter this path, you start finding out, especially when you go into what's called a midlife crisis, 40 to 45 years old, around that period, 40 to 50, tremendous natural occurrence in the human container or the body occurs when youth evaporates and now you're in midlife and all the confusion, just like when you're coming from a child and you're becoming a teenager. We all know the dramas of becoming a teenager and all the craziness that comes with that. It's like Alice Cooper had that famous song, that famous rock guy, oddball rock star, Christian through all that, if you can believe it. But point is, he had the song "I'm 18." It was a big hit, and he talks about all the confusion of being 18. I'm just joking in that sense, but I remember all these things because when I was that age, that's what I worked in a record store. We used to have the preachers come by of Hare Krishna, and they'd store their books in the back of my record store, and they go out in the parking lots, and I would facilitate them. And we'd set up displays for the magazine in the store. I did a lot that was when I was first starting out. So I remember that youthful exuberance. What we're trying to do today, I'm going to help you receive the shock of God. I'm going to show you some things, although the only real thing is a willingness and a desire to receive the shock of God. But like all experience of esoteric religion, receiving the shock of God is a gift from the absolute himself. It's a gift. It's not something you have to get a gift. Somebody has to like you, right? Think about it. If you get a gift in the mail, like I did recently from a very wonderful friend, and she sent me a very nice gift of Shastra. I told her, hey, a gift of Shastra benefits both of us to the extreme degree. But when you receive a gift, it's because somebody likes you or loves you, right? So it's similar. Receiving the shock of God is a great, great gift, and it comes from Lord Hari. But our desire to enjoy life with the illusion of what's called something else, somewhere else, it haunts us. This is the trigger point. I'm identifying for you the trigger point in the ahankar. Because in order to receive the shock of God, what has to happen is we have to take the ahankar apart at the root. So this trigger is something else, somewhere else. Now, if you're listening to me now, which is vital that you listen very carefully to what I'm saying, if you're looking at your cell phone and multitasking, you have to realize that you're in the illusion of something else somewhere else. What's being said here and presented is not good enough. You have to be looking out somewhere else for something else. And this BS illusion is why they created these social networks and cell phone. Think about it. You pretend you have all these hundreds and hundreds of friends who you've never met. They're fake friends. And they're doing this and they're all posting what they're doing. Oh, it's this big world. There's all this stuff. And you're constantly on the damn phone. So even prior to the phones, everybody, the normal condition of Maya is that you're caught up in looking for something else somewhere else. Well, I'm over at Vish's house and Jai, there's a program over here. We're going over there now. And boom, 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 beat on the madungas. Oh, great, great. Wow. Well, I heard, oh, I'm looking at my phone. Oh, there's another program down here. See, it's never good enough. The moment's never good enough. So to receive the shock of God, the very basic kindergarten thing you have to do, kindergarten means the preschool before you go into first grade is kindergarten. You have to get over this something else somewhere else, put down your phone, turn it off if you're listening to this class, and be ready to receive the shock of God. Receive certain things with an individual that will help them, first of all, to understand this ahankar, what I call the bastard. Why is it a bastard? Because this false ego, this bastard, is the progeny. In other words, it was birthed out of what is called the witch of Maya. Many, many times in Vedic literature, everything, Maya is referred to as a witch. And the witch has given birth to a bastard known as the ahankar. And to understand the ahankar in its deep connection to what I call the donkey of doubt, this is what lives and breathes. It's like a morphing, expanding disease within the ahankar. It's called the donkey of doubt. When someone like me presents a teaching like this, immediately the donkey starts kicking and kicking at different levels. For the more advanced practitioners, the donkey of doubt doesn't kick anymore. Why? I'll tell you later. I don't want to shock you too early in the talk. But the more the donkey of doubt is arising right now, as you hear me saying these things, the more work you have to do on your ahankar, your ego. You have to dissect it. It has to be taken apart. And it lies in the root of the body, mind, and the soul, if you will, of the disease of casualness, this taking everything casual. And all that gets knocked out when death comes. Somebody gets sick, or like what they did recently when they pulled this hoax on everybody. What did they do? They threatened everyone with death through this what? The fake pandemic, which is now completely falling apart. The news just has to catch up. That's America and the rest of the world. They just have the news. Everybody has to, the wheel of truth will grind over that hoax, but they have to catch up. But what is the threat? Death. All of a sudden, everybody, and then of course being forced to be locked up at home, they use the threat of death to lock everybody up at home and social distance, wear this stupid mask and all this crap, all this stuff which makes you sicker. It's all been proven. And they had the cure from the beginning. Now, I've already done a class on the fake pandemic, which you can watch on our YouTube channel prior to this. So I'm not going to talk about that here, but I just want you to understand, what were they threatening? with this fake COVID-19, which is a lab-created disease, by the way. They patented it, and you cannot patent something that's created by nature. So there's a proof right there. When the government of the United States wouldn't let them do it, they farmed it out to, you got it, Wuhan, China. Gee, what a coincidence. 2 labs over there funded and paid for and promoted by the Communist Chinese, the American communists, and of course, the famous communist from Hungary, George Soros, all funded by these people, Bill Gates, and Dr. Fauci, all part of the funding of the patented fake virus. But what is the problem with it? It's not the virus. I'm not here to talk about it. And again, I have a class on it you can watch. It's the threat of death. Because the minute death is threatened, everybody caves in and goes, oh my God, now I'm serious. Now I'm not so damn casual. But think about it. When you were presented with Krishna and the beauty of Lord Hari, the shock of the beauty of Lord Hari and Radharani and their connection with these things, if you believe in these things and follow these things, it's not a religion or anything. It's actually a realization of Godhead. And then this disease of casualness comes up. How insulting is that to the teaching, you see? The donkey is this fear, this resistance from what I call the spell of childishness. It all stems from a spell of childishness. If you're a real yogi Vaishnava, you can't possibly be exhibiting the spell of childishness, which is like, oh, what's the food like? Oh, does it have enough turmeric in it? Oh, I didn't like it. It was too salt. This is completely childish. Oh, when's the kirtan going to start? Oh, let me check with these other people to see if they're going. This is all childishness. A real Vaishnav yogi could care less about all that stuff. So the donkey is this fear, this resistance to ever want to receive the shock of God. Now we're getting to the main point here. And again, I gave you the disclaimer earlier, don't blame the messenger. It's not really me talking. It may seem like it, but who's really in this room right now? Who's really here on this internet? Who invented all these things? Think about it for a second. That's the first step in the shock of God. Who invented all these things? Who's the only one sitting in all these things? Who's speaking through who? Who's listening through who? The sound of my voice goes into your ear, and inside of your ear, there's a canal. It's like a water canal, only it's like a little miniature, amazing thing invented by God in the human being and other animals too. Some have very advanced hearing. A human being is average. But the sound waves from my voice go in and makes little ripples on that canal. Those little waves or ripples are translated by neuroassociates in the brain, shown here in this picture. I'm showing you this picture now. The neurosynapse with the brain of the sound coming in through the ear, watering, hitting that canal, vibrating the water-like fluid in there, and synapsing with messages that come to the brain and translate somehow into English, because I'm speaking in English, they're coming in English. If I start speaking Hispanic or Hindi, the synapse would go into that because it's been pre-programmed by the system to identify with that type of language. Do you see what's going on here? There is a deliberate attempt to keep people outside of the shock of God right now. And they're doing it with these cell phones and the social media and the regular TV, fake news media, all this stuff. It's all being done on purpose. And when someone wants to prevent someone from taking a higher path to Godhead and blocking it, that's called basically what's modern day Satanism. It's a satanic effort. Just want you to know that. So when we talk about the shock of God, it's not God against Satan or anything like that. The shock of God eats up and swallows all these satanic ideas like they were nothing. Just like food to puke up later, which is what it is. It's all just puke. All this satanic programming that's going on. But the voice of the Ahankar tells us now is never good enough. That's one of the messages of this ego bastard. The Ahankar, now is never good enough. I need something else somewhere else. Oh, let me check my phone while this guy's talking because, ooh, it's kind of heavy and I want to see something goofy and happy. So let me check my messages. you're not paying attention. And frankly, if you're doing that, you might as well just leave. Frankly, you're not serious and you're not qualified to hear the message. So no offense, we'll send you a gift still if you want to make a comment, but you have to realize, if you feel insulted because I talked about your precious social media networks, you have to realize how brainwashed you are. And if you want to receive the shock of God and come to any kind of level of advancement in this teaching of Vaishnav yoga, I call it Vaishnav yoga, being a yoga practitioner, but a Vaishnav, part of the bhakti experience, part of the body. It is more like an experience, like a verb. It's not a thing, a religion, a practice. Oh, you do that, I do this. I'm a Christian, and you're a Hindu, a Muslim. The first thing His Divine Grace Prabhupada taught us was the first shock of the ahankar, I am not a man or a woman. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his guru, used to say, he'd look out over his group of sannyasis and hundreds of other followers. He says, the hoax is that we are pretending that we're men and women, because the sannyasis, I'm male, I'm up front, I've got this staff, the peons are in the back. And then on the other side, the peons in the back, and they, I'm just a little peon, or I'm a woman, which Vedic culture and other cultures had that tendency. And it's natural, because a woman has to be subservient in the sense that she gets, by nature, she gets pregnant, she's receiving, she births a baby, grows a baby, a very painful process where this child is reared inside her abdomen area in the womb. It grows, and then through a painful process, it is birthed. And then the woman, and of course the man, if in a marriage, of course, but the idea is that she's automatically subservient. She has to feed and nurse and take care of the baby. She is subservient because the man has to go out and produce money in order to serve and take care of the family. I haven't stated anything racist or anti-feminist. I've just simply told you what's there in nature. That's a fact. It has to be done that way. Now, in the modern world, obviously, things have been adjusted horrifically through abortions and the woman deciding, I'm just going to go for my career first, or I'll get a big career or have a big career and I'll pay for a nanny to take care of the kid. Well, that's fine. Good job. But still, the process was there. The baby had to be birthed through the subordinate woman. It doesn't mean woman is a lower class. It just means the natural position. Just like the man, a lot of men have become very feminine, and they want the women to go out and work, and they just want to hang out at home, and I'll take care of the kid, and I'll clean the dishes, and I'll take care of the house, which is fine if they want to change that role. But by nature, it's not like that. The role is different. So something to think about. But as we approach this teaching and we realize that the bastard wants to constantly dominate our life, yet we claim we want to be or are claiming to be an advanced practitioner of bhakti yoga, we got some work to do today. And I'm going to go through this with you here. But in Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, it is the season of the witch. Her name is Maya, the sorceress, who through the magic of illusion has given birth to a bastard, the ahankar, the ego. Now remember, to play out the role of the bastard, the ego is the kiss of death for the soul. You spend the rest of your life walking around in a dhoti or going to yoga classes and being a yoga teacher, but all you're doing is trying to hit on the ladies in your class. I know people like this. That's it's not, and I'm going, that's not a real yoga. That's, and the women are going there with their clothes on thinking, ooh, maybe I'll meet a cute guy there. This is not yoga. It's the kiss of death to function through this type of ego, to take the bastard apart systematically through self-inquiry, as I mentioned before, to die while living. See, that's the difficult part, because like I said, that's how they use that pandemic. Oh, everybody's terrified. Oh, are we going to die? We're going to die. Well, if you don't care about dying, then it has no power over you, right? To die while living through self-inquiry, to take apart the old, false, knotted, contracted, quote, self, ego, that is indeed the illumination of life itself. Now listen to this. I'm serious. I want you to really listen. This event, the death of the ego, the end of all false hope, and the starvation of the soul will absolutely be required by everyone. at all time and under all circumstance, every embodied being, even the extraterrestrials, which I'm an expert in that field for a long time, over 40 years. There's over 100,000 species of human beings, humans, not on this earth, but in other planets and around the galaxy. Some are humanoid, some are extraterrestrial, but I refer them all as extraterrestrial just for simplicity. There is 100,000, according to the Vedas, 4,800,000 species, and approximately 100,000 of those are human or extraterrestrial type human. Now, evidence shows that over 70 types of extraterrestrials are now interreacting with the Earth and have interreacted with the Earth over a long period of time. This is all coming out. The Navy released some things recently admitting extraterrestrials are real. This is what ufologists, as they're called, which I was a big participant in that long ago. I was on the national news networks and everything. This is what we always waited and hoped and dreamed for, and it just quietly came out a few weeks ago. Oh, the Navy says it's all real, and we're now tracking them and creating files. Not well, they're lying because as they have for 70 years, because they've been tracking and following them. Actually, the first case was in the late 1800s. The famous one is the Roswell incident. You might have heard of that. But anyway, this death of the ego, the ahankar bastard, the end of all false hope and starvation of the soul will absolutely be required by everyone, every human being, even an extraterrestrial who in their race, they live an average of 200 to 300 years, like the Venusians. The Martians, I think that's a race that has kind of disappeared, but the Martians used to live for at least 200 years. But the ego is the problem, the dilemma. It's the refusal to love. This staunch, heavy refusal to love, instead be bona fide. I'm not in love. I'm not in love with God. I'm bona fide. To be love. One thing to stop refusing to love everything that you see, because when you fall in love with God and you receive the shock of God, you will absolutely, totally fall in love with all that you survey. Every single item, every little insect, amoeba, seen and unseen, you will fall in love with them. You will be love. And that is a shock, because to do that, you have to take this bastard apart, and you have to allow the real, the ahankar, the real living, breathing ego to come out. The one that does love, that is love, to come out and give real compassion. Look, this is the refusal to be found out. That's what's going on right now. You've been found out by Hari, Lord Hari. This is the refusal to be found out by God, who wants to shock you into realization of, first of all, realize you're busted. This game you're playing, this stupid, loveless game, this foolish, loveless, every day, every night, looking at the social, oh, who likes me, who doesn't like, who thinks I'm beautiful, who thinks I'm ugly, oh, they don't like me, oh, you know, this is why devotees shave their heads, because get over this thing of all this thinking we're so beautiful and so attractive and so cool, this cool bastard playing this game we're playing. But if you want to return to Godhead now, while in this body, alive as the real soul, the real Jivatma, the golden ancient particle, alive as the soul, the golden drop of Godhead himself, Achintya Beta Abeda, one with and different from God. The soul is a drop of the ocean. And some people say the ocean within the drop within the ocean within the drop. It's just like Jesus, the Son to the Father to the Son. The Father and the Son are one. It's a fact. That's why he said, I and my Father are one, because it's the Son, the what we call in Vaishnavism as he's playing. This is offered in Krishna consciousness, is that we can be God's friend, we can be his parent, we can become his paramour. There's all kinds of esoteric things involved. But first, this bastard has to come apart. I don't care if you've been chanting japa for 20 years and you've been to the Himalayas and you've stumbled around Vrindavan and went to all the temples. If this bastard is not taken apart, it won't matter. It was all a great, what I call a transcendental tourist. How many transcendental tourists have I met in my many travels to India? I've been to India 19 times, always went alone and usually went around alone. And I went to the holy places too. But this is where a lot of this, the Lord transmitted these ideas I'm teaching you today down through me to you. But to give up and surrender to the Godhead, that's not that easy. That's to receive the shock of God. We can stay surrendered to the force of the loveless egoic existence if we want, the cool bastard, the illegitimate son of the witch Maya, play out our heartless role until the physical death comes, and by force, we are confronted with the truth of this message. I'm making a case here. The truth of this message that you're hearing right now, this is the shock of God starting to manifest, and it's rising in your body. Will the spell of childishness pull you back from it and say, oh, he's full of shit, that guy, and I don't need to listen to this, and I'm going to get back on my cell phone and call one of my fake friends that came through the social networks and see when the next devotional gathering is or something. This can happen. This is the bastard. This is how he operates. It's not a different viewpoint or any of these are all the nature of Maya. By force, we're going to be confronted with the message that I'm giving you today. Automatically, by force, when death comes. Oh God, just when you're ready to die. Oh God, well, there it is. The shock of God. I'm going out. So let's move through the teaching now. Receiving the shock of God. I explained to you how it all starts with a synapse in the ear. The sound comes through and you receive this teaching. How else can it come? But did you know that's what the ear does? And did you know what you're hearing right now is actually a complex product, or a complex process, I should say, of what's actually a product, because we were all invented. We're products of God. But as a process he implemented into the human form, where it's like waves. Fluid vibrating transmits a message which has been conditioned to hear in English. You actually don't hear in English or any language, but if you think about your thoughts, it's all seems to be repeated in the language you're familiar with. But if you go live in India for a while and you start speaking Hindi to everybody, you might start thinking in Hindi. But the American thing, if you're from the United States, it's very implemented deeply into the body. So naturally, it may take a while for that to transition, but it doesn't matter. The idea is you ultimately think in their transmissions from these ear canal facility. So I'm letting everything soak in a little bit here as we move on. So as you move on, you realize it's 72,000 nadis. Can you see what's really going on? The 72,000 nadis in the body are receiving messages from your fingertips, from your skin, from the hairs in your skin, from your sexual organs, from your anus. There's 5 openings: the mouth, ears, eyes, nose, mouth, anus, sexual organ. There's openings in the body, channels into the body, and the nadis within the body, which are like subatomic neurological systems, not like the regular nerves. Those can actually be measured. You can't measure pain and all that. You can see the result of it, but you can't actually measure the feeling. You can't put on a meter and say, oh, the pain's really high. Similar stuff is done by the modern medical industry. But I'm giving you an idea. And then you're going to take this whole thing, which is contracted at the heart. The heart is knotted and contracted. Knotted and contracted like a tight fist. If you grip a fist and squeeze it, and you won't let up. Then the heart is knotted like that. And my Guru Maharaj used to say, when the seal over the heart is broken, then the whole divine flow, literally it's like an explosion in the body. The divine flow comes in, the smooth, natural flow of all that divine love that was contracted in the knotted heart awakens. Do you see that? One has to die to the ego and relive as the unborn Atma arisen from the graveyard of Satchit Ananda Sundaram, where the ego cannot and will not survive. You must become a Grateful Dead. Remember them? The Grateful Dead. That's what we all must become to receive the shock of God, a Grateful Dead. We alive as the servant of Lord Hari. Realize it's this divine condition I'm talking about here of existence is where all beings must end up in their full evolution after the obliteration of the Ahankar. We were just talking about that. They must end up. It's not like, well, I liked his concept. You get this kind of crap, and it's like, okay, whatever, right back into the Ahankar. This guy has a concept. See, that's called the spell of childishness. You're resisting what God is presenting here to help you come out of this contraction. This absolutely will be required by everyone. If you wait up until death, well, then you get it then. But if you can do it now and you claim to be a spiritual practitioner, this will be a great advantage for you. This is where the party really starts. All beings must end up in their full evolution after the obliteration of the Ahankar. This is the wanted and desired life condition of all beings, from the amoeba, the smallest living particle in the sense of an entity. Obviously, the subatomic principle, which we talked about last time on our last class, is even smaller than that. But the smallest being, what I'm saying, this wanted and desired life condition from all beings, from the amoeba to the god Shiva, who's considered to be the ultimate highest entity within the Viraja River. In other words, the entity that's in the world and still, but in a higher condition. Shiva's a whole complex. I could do a whole class in Lord Shiva's position. Shiva, Shiva, Shankara, Hara, Hara, Mahadev, Shambhu, Jai. From the amoeba to the god Shiva, that covers the whole range. You can't go much lower than an amoeba if you get reborn from sinful activities as a worm or a fly. You can't go much lower than amoeba. And if you do this practice with great, great intensity and you become the greatest siddha, all the way up to you can actually be appointed as Shiva, not from your yoga class or your imagination or your goofy goo gaga thoughts of childishness, which you hear a lot of this stuff being promoted. Americans are so ridiculous. Some of them, they just like, they get a hold of yoga and they just, here it goes, screw it up and flush it down the toilet. Just the dumbest things you've ever heard in the yoga community. All these cliches, they think these cliches are going to take them back to Godhead. You know, well, I'm just a human, I'm a soul having a human experience. Well, yeah, that's true. And then they stop and go off and smoke some weed and hook up with somebody and then go to do their yoga class to get over their psychosis. And it's the cycle goes on and on. I know I play guitar in the yoga centers. I play kind of a raga type guitar. I've been doing it for a while. I've done over 148 concerts there. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying it's the bastard. It's not even, quote, them. I'm not blaming her and him and this and that. No, I love these people, but it's the bastard. It's the Ahankar. But once you realize this is already automatically, definitely, positively, and guaranteed, this wanted and desired condition of life, the release from the Ahankar bastard, is absolutely going to be required from all beings, from the amoeba to the god Shiva, the fully joyful state of divine prema bhakti. This is when the heart snaps, prema bhakti starts to open. Prema bhakti is a very, very, very high level and should not be taken casually, shouldn't even be discussed technically. I'm only mentioning it because this state of full love, when that seal, the first thing is to snap that seal over the knotted heart. Once that snaps, once it snaps, this is the very baby kindergarten beginning of prema bhakti. A lot of fake gurus and other people want to come out and talk about all these very high things like Siddha Pranali and stuff like this. Very, very dangerous, because you got to remember, listen to me carefully, those of you who are involved in that. Sat ain't chit without Ananda. Knowledge of eternity without bliss is not the complete picture. And you have to question everything. Is it a hoax or a hoaxaja? Just what I'm showing here. What's really going on? Can we see what's really going on? Is it the hoax or the adhoxaja, which is another name of God? of Lord Hari. Adhok Saja, Bhagavan Adhok Saja, Ki Jai. Hoax or Adhok Saja. And then you'll realize the hoax that's being perpetrated on people thinking that they can go from zero practice hardly at all in what's called beginning bhakti to prema bhakti. They can start talking about prema bhakti without even thinking, I have no right to talk about this. Who am I? I shall gaze at this from a long, long distance with folded hands and tears in my eyes. But not even that. They haven't even got the shock of God yet. And that's why the Ahankar is just working his mutation. And now you got goofy young Americans who haven't even really stepped onto the path of Vaidhi Bhakti, which is the initial stage, talking about these type of things. It's really embarrassing is what it is ultimately. It's embarrassing. And we're here to put this to a stop if we can, or at least try to ratchet up the reality of how fake it is to do that. But when you achieve this condition that I'm talking about, happily realize it and live in this state, not hankering, wishing, or desiring something else somewhere else anymore. Because when you even partially taste one minute drop of this, one minute drop of the concept, the idea of prema bhakti, you won't want something else somewhere else. There is no somewhere else. There's nothing else. You won't want it. Listen to this. This is the words of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the Guru of Srila Prabhupada. And this is from the purport that he wrote, the beginning introduction to the Hari Bhakti Kalpalatika, which was a scripture actually he discovered. Bhakti Vinod Thakur had a copy, and he tried to get a copy. He couldn't retain his somehow, but he saw a Ramananda sadhu near Jagannath Temple, most likely, with a copy and chanting from this book, and somehow he procured a copy. But he wrote in his introduction, Bhakti grows like a creeper grows from a tiny seed. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is saying this. By becoming a gardener, the jiva sows the seed and nourishes it with water in the form of hearing and chanting the holy name of Krishna. If the seed of bhakti, listen to me, if the seed of bhakti is growing in you and you don't water it as a gardener, anybody who knows the first thing about gardening, you buy a new plant at the plant store and you put it in the backyard, go, okay, baby, grow into a tree, come on, I'm waiting. And you don't pour any water on it or nourish it or protect it from insects or whatever the case, how's it going to grow? So these people come in, the yogi people, I hear it everywhere from even people who don't practice real yoga, but they're doing all these postures and they're thinking, oh, I've got the highest, I'm in samadhi. I mean, all kinds of amazing garbage, fascinating stuff. The creeper of bhakti develops, shoots, and grows to pierce through this mundane sphere. The growing creeper goes through a stream of viraja. This is the river, the divine river, the Viraja river, which is the unmanifested state outside this universe. Then, if you've received the shock of God, you're permissioned to move into the graveyard of Satchit Ananda, which is just on the other side of this Viraja river. And there you can continue to cultivate in communion with the Lord and later get your visa to enter into the Goloka planet. But let me finish real quick here with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. I don't mean to interrupt the words, but I want you to understand how it correlates with the graveyard of Satchit Ananda Sundaram. I'll repeat that. The growing creeper goes through the stream of Viraja, the unmanifested state outside the universe. Then it goes through the illuminated plane of Brahman, which is the white light of spiritual bliss, until the creeper finally attains for herself, because that creeper now is Mother Bhakti, and the soul is a herself too. Ultimately, we're all female. You heard me earlier talk about the male and female roles. Well, if you got upset about that, it's because you're pretending you're female and I'm male, and that's just another illusion. But the ultimate case is spiritually, we're all female. Until the creeper finally attains for herself a home in the soil, the divine soil of the infinite sphere called the Paramavyom. The Paramavyom is the transcendental plane. The creeper continues to grow in the Paramavyom atmosphere and reaches the limits of the higher sphere of Goloka Vrindavan, where she climbs and clings to the purpose tree at the feet of Lord Krishna. So she goes there and there's a tree right at the feet of Lord Krishna. And she, the soul, when she climbs through that stage and reaches Goloka Vrindavan, she clings to the purpose tree at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And from there, it's this intense relationship of wanting to experience and become and be part of this all love, which is the absolute. So let me go into some other more direct shocks here if you haven't got enough already. These are some beginning shocks to receive to enter what is called the graveyard of Satchidananda. You can't imagine it. It's not a concept. In fact, just to give you an idea, it's like one may think everything is based on concept and imagination and my mental ability and all that, whatever. But picture this, receiving the shock cannot be practiced. The shock that I'm giving you, I'm teaching you some things today, and you can soak them in and learn them, but they cannot be practiced or trained or imagined any more than sticking a fork in a wall socket by an ignorant person who doesn't know what electricity is. It will not give you an imaginary experience of what electricity is. Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, this shock cannot be practiced, trained, or imagined. Sort of can, because I'm sort of giving some training here. But just like sticking a fork in an electric socket, if you want to know electricity and you know what probably is going to happen, go stick a fork in an electric socket. You'll find out, not by imagination, not by some practice or training or some concept, what this is. You'll know what electricity is. And you can't see it, touch it, hear it, smell it, taste it, but you can feel it when it runs through your body. So everybody's so anxious to use their five senses to pretend that they can know everything: hearing, smelling, touching, feeling, tasting, seeing. See what I mean? In other words, they're so into that. And from that, they come up with these ideas like, well, that's a very interesting concept you had there, Anadinath. You see the bastards just rising back up, trying to blur out and block out the teaching that's coming down. Go stick a fork in the electric socket. You can't hear, taste, touch, smell electricity. What if I said to you, well, I don't believe in God? And you said, wow, you're trying to preach to me and teach it to me. I said, I don't believe in electricity either. And he goes, oh, now I know you're nuts. You don't believe in electricity? I go, what's like your God? Can't see him, touch him, taste him, feel him, smell him, whatever. And you say, here, take this fork. Yeah, okay. I don't know. These lights just happen to be coming on and working on their own. I don't know why they're working. It's just something that's happening. There's no electricity behind it. That's your concept. Here, my friend, take this fork and go stick it in that little hole in the wall. See that white thing with the two little prongs there? Stick that in there. Now that guy's going to know what electricity is. There goes the ahankar. There goes the bastard right there. Boom. You have to be willing to do that inside of yourself. It's all within, like the verse I quoted from Lord Krishna earlier. The yogi is illuminated within, enlivened within, put into ecstasy within. Everything is done within. This whole thing is all within yourself. Externally, we can go to kirtans and classes, and you can hear me, and you can do this. You can do whatever you want, but everything is done within. And that's where all the correction takes place, and that's where all the growth takes place, and that's where all the expansion takes place, all the way up to, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, our beloved father and grandfather, taught us, till it reaches this beloved tree at the feet of Lord Krishna. It clings to that, the creeper. It wraps itself around and says, never let me go. Don't let me leave this spot ever. Anyway, this means that throughout throwing out all ideas about being cool or beautiful or I'm advanced in yoga, or the worst, I'm advanced in Krishna consciousness. I've been practicing ACBTS. They got some little, I don't know what the initials are, but they put a little on there like it's an MD title, you know, PhD, ACBS, I don't know what it is. Hey, don't be offended if you're one of those. I'm sorry. The bastard has to be taken apart. You have to become raw and complete. Cool, advanced in Krishna consciousness, being a teacher of yoga. I'm a teacher. Oh, really? You've never been a student? There's so much of this going on in America. It's so disgusting. Everybody's so anxious to be a teacher, but they hate being a student. This is the bastard in its full glory, full wings spread with plumes of all different colors. I'm a teacher. I'm a divine teacher. I'm an intuitive, whatever, whatever, whatever. If you go through the New Age newspapers in the advertising department, all these smiley people, I'm an intuitive, this, that, highly sensitive, da-da-da, psychic, healing, healer, yogini, and they name about 10 different lineages that they're from. And of course, they're lineage holders. I've seen it all. You can't even believe it. I'm a lineage holder in 5 different lines. There's not one lineage out there, if you really surrendered to it and became part of, you would ever go wandering over to another line and become a, quote, lineage holder in that. It's just American version of the Ahankar morphed into the biggest form of the bastard you can ever imagine. It has to be taken apart. A guru, oh my God, don't get me started on that. I did a 10-year study on the gurus that came to America. 10 years, not 10 hours, not 10 minutes like most people have an opinion after 10 minutes. 10 years of thousands of hours I studied. Every single one of those so-called yogis or gurus that came to America fell down with the women, had sex with the women. Every single, or sometimes the kids or the guys. Don't get me started on that, but I'm just saying, every single one of them, except for His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Now, since he came, and he challenged him, because he knew, and they hated him for that. But ever since he came, many sannyasis and things were made. Well, maybe not many, but a lot. And other great sannyasis from that lineage of all the 4 authorized sampradayas of the Vaishnava lineages came and have been very devout, advanced practitioners. I'm not saying there's no advanced practitioners. I'm saying here in America, there's so much of what I just described, these efforts to be cool and beautiful and a big teacher and a this and a that and a guru. Oh, I'm a guru. Oh my God. It's kind of laughable. It's a joke. It's not something I'm angry about or anything. But even as we have seen, and that's actually who this class is for, many sannyasis who have not attained this level of taking apart the ahankar, and they fall down. And that would be the root source of it. That's why they went away. The disease of casualness got a hold of them after practicing some time. But even then, re-merging the spell of childishness, and they start trying to, quote, enjoy being a sannyasi. And, oh, everybody's listening to me preach. Oh, I'm enjoying so much. You know, I go out and preach and probably a lot of people be cursing me. That's my enjoyment, right? Oh boy, big enjoyment. But anyway, the point is I don't aspire for that. And that's why I said the disclaimer. I aspire for helping you get to the real condition of prema bhakti, tasting 1/2 of a millispeck of a dot of a drop of prema bhakti. You will faint in shock and you'll die to live. So all this is coming preparatory for the rest of my seminar, which will be almost done here pretty soon, but I just want to prepare you for the next portion, because when we talk about the things I'm going to talk about, you have to realize how serious the human form is and how intense and what some people have really gone through in this human life. And especially those who become followers of the divine teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the followers of the Siddhas like Gorakhsanath and all the descendants of Gorakhsanath, which is practically, technically the line of Shiva. Shiva, Shiva, Shankara, Hara, Hara, Mahadev, Shambhu. The lineage of the Siddhas coming from there. Om Da, Siddha Gorakhsanath, Maharaja Ki Jai. Om Shiva Da Goraksa Siddha Jogi, Naranjan, Niranjan, Niranjan, Adesh, Adesh, Adesh. This is a chant of Gorakhsanath Siddha. Om Shiva Da Goraksa Siddha Jogi, Niranjan, 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 Adesh, Adesh, Adesh. It means the teaching of the Siddha, the teaching. And Adesh locks it in to the body, into the neurological system. Shiva, Da, original father, Goraksa, Lord Gorakhsanath, coming from Matsendranath, the original follower, original guru, I have a picture of him here in my temple. Matsyendranath is sitting, floating 3 feet above his ashram, and all the disciples, about 10 disciples around, all laying flat in Dandavat pranams. Very intense. And you'll see something about, I'm mentioning this Dandavat pranam because I got something to show you that'll really blow your mind. I think if you're a follower, especially of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, receive the instructions from Lord Hari, cross the Viraja, cross it, and on the other side, move into the graveyard of Satchidananda. You can do that in this life. It is possible, it is guaranteed, and it is assured by the followers, the real followers of this sampradaya, this ancient sampradaya of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and from the other sampradayas like Ramanuja Bhagavan, Madhvacharya Bhagavan, Vishnu Swami Bhagavan, and also Nimbarka Swami Maharaj Ki Jai, and Sankaracharya Maharaj. But Sankaracharya, although he sang Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Muramate, Samprapti, Saniyate, Kali, Naksi, Naksati, Dukkanakarane. It's a beautiful verse. And I actually have a song on that I play here around the Akshayabat Vishnu Temple because it's so beautiful. It's the way it's produced and everything. But I love the beauty of the song, but it's this verse from Sankaracharya, who later in life, and all the Sankaracharyites try to refute it. They can't deny it, but he says, worship Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja. 3 times he repeats it. You ass. Muda mate, you ass. You foolish ass. Samprapte saniyate kali rakshati dukkanakarane. In other words, all these things I've taught you, these impersonal ideas, Panchopashan worship, everything, all this, death is coming. And there again, he reiterates the seriousness of death. These will not save you at the time of death. Only the worship of Lord Govinda, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, the beautiful Hari, the most beautiful form of Hari, Govindam, Govindam Adipurusam Tamaham Bhajami. This beautiful form of Govindam will save you. So there's the master, the founder of the Advaita that a lot of these goofy American yoga kids try to pretend that they know what that means, become the self, and they follow these foolish loser followers from Jamaica and other places, and they just frauds, sex addicts, and crazy people. I mean, crazy beyond belief. No serious Vedic practitioner would ever take them serious, but they follow them, and I've met so many of them. I've been doing this a long time. I go back when Bikram first came out and had his hot yoga rooms and all that. So I was going to those every day. I loved his concept. He was a jerk, and I could tell, another womanizer. And it was, I'd already known that. And Rajneesh, oh God, what a fool, what a loser. And some of the most famous people that sing and all that now are followers of him. And it's unbelievable. But that's okay, whatever. Oh, they just brush off all his, getting high on amyl nitrate poppers and sitting around hitting on laughing gas, watching his disciples fornicate. Come on, this was all reported by his bodyguards, had books way, way back. This is old news. But America, they have a way of snuffing out stuff that doesn't agree with their narrative. They just love to we disappeared on the internet. Now it's not true anymore, right? You can probably still got that guy, that bodyguard of Rajneesh's, who left him and said, this guy's disgusting. And he told about all these things I just told you. What to speak of the popular ones nowadays. They've snuffed out all the information about their guru falling down on the internet. Oh, now it doesn't exist because it's not on the internet. Bullshit. It's still there in the memory of the women who got harassed by these people. Anyway, I'm not trying to be a Me Too advocate, a modern Me Too advocate. I'm just saying these are the kind of things that are going on. But just because it's not on the internet doesn't mean it's not true. So my 10-year study, I told you, showed that they all fell down. And now they don't even pretend to practice celibacy or anything. It's just like, why should we do that? We're Americans. We can change the whole process. But it's absolutely required, by the way. I call it celebrate. Once a guru asked me, well, are you celibate? I said, which I was at the time. And I laughed, and I said, which is another proof of celibacy. You laugh a lot when you're celibate. I said, no, I'm celebrate. And he had two disciples with him, and they both looked at him like, Guruji, what are you? And then the guru, he laughed, and he looked at me, he laughed, and they both started laughing in harmony, you know, because that's how disciples are. They tend to follow. If he likes it, I can't laugh, and then he frowns. That's an insult to the guru. It's an aparad to Guru Dev. So what is he? He laughed, and he said, okay, I like it. It's nice. So anyway. That's part of the requirement, by the way. If you didn't know that and you think you're going to figure a workaround for that, you might as well just give up now. There's no workaround. This practice is protected by celibacy. There's no real yoga, no real Vaishnavism. Mahaprabhu was very kind of merciful, and I'll show you in a second. We're going to move into that now. But if you want to determine what is hoax or adhokshaja, you have to follow the rules and realize absolutely protected by divine celibacy. You have to take all that energy, turn it all in upon itself, and then start building it up to where all the 72,000 nadis are saturated with the ecstasy of the orgasm being turned in upon itself. To get into the graveyard of Satchidananda, absolutely required. And once it all turns in upon itself, everybody's so worried about this thing of celibacy, yet they keep approaching yoga with wide eyes and bushy tail and all exuberant, but they don't realize, do you plan on being celibate for the rest of your life? Well, no. Why are you pretending you're so interested in Shiva and Ma Kali and Krishna and, oh yeah, I love kirtan and this is for celibate people. These practices are all for celibate people. Yes, the regular population can be accommodated. Mahaprabhu did that, but eventually, if you want realization, this is absolutely required. And when you move into the graveyard of Satchidananda, people worry. We were talking about last class I did on poppers, expanding orgasms, and how Fauci covered up the gay community because he was in charge of the whole trying to come up with an AIDS cure. He didn't want to cure AIDS, just like he didn't want to cure the fake pandemic that's going on right now as I speak. It's winding up now because people are realizing it's fake. But Fauci, if you look at his history, he could have just told the gay people immediately, stop taking drugs, especially amyl nitrate, which are called poppers. They weaken your immune system so bad you become immediately susceptible. He decided, actually, and I went over this last week on the class, he decided, oh no, we don't want to do that. We want to come up with a vaccine. That way we can raise millions and millions of dollars to research the vaccine. They cashed in on that. 36 million people died and they cashed in researching, and they still do this crap today. You'll see Hollywood will have a thing. This is all going to AIDS research. Oh, it's still they'll see it's to perpetually never find a cure, just like they'll probably never find a real vaccine for the COVID-19. Get used to it. These people are demons. But anyway, moving on. So what I wanted to say, which was more important than that, but I wanted to give you a little background. The idea of trying to expand the orgasm with amyl nitrate or things like that is a hoax. It's not the adhokshaja. The adhokshaja means moving into the graveyard of Satchidananda, doing exactly what I'm saying, turning yourself, celibacy, all back in on yourself, regenerating and rejuvenating all the 72,000 nadis so you can do what? Move up through the chakras, up to the Brahmarandra, the top chart. This is what everybody talks about. And you'll see charts and graphs at the yoga schools. Oh, yes, yes. Well, we're trying to push the energy up to what energy? You've been squirting it out. There's no energy in there. The only energy you have is the residual energy of the ahankar, the false ego, the bastard's energy to what? Assert false yoga teachings. That's the bastard. But we're going to move the energy out. What are you moving up? The only thing to move up is the Qing, as the Chinese call it, which is turned into ojas, which turns into a syrupy mixture that's very thick and becomes a nourishing, like mega vitamins for the nadis, the 72,000 nadis. That's real yoga. So now let's move on. Let's receive the shock of God here. Let's get into it and receive the shock of God. Do you want to move into the graveyard of Satchidananda Sundaram? After all I've told you today, I went to all this trouble. I hope you appreciate it. I'm working hard here. Not really. actually just trying to do the will of God and do what I'm required by my Gurudev to do, which is help you enter the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda if you have the desire. If you want anything in life, you want to become rich, have the desire. Let it burn in your heart, burn in your soul, burn in your hands and feet and eyes and ears. Every day you get up and go, I'm setting my goals. I'm making a plan. Whatever that is, wherever you are, you can do it. Put your desire, intense desire and intention on that goal, and make everything in your life surround that goal, and you'll achieve it. If you feel that kind of intensity for getting a new partner, a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, a new job, making $5,000 a month. Yeah, I want to make $60,000 a year. Yeah, whatever it is. Or I want to travel the world. Yeah, that's all I think about day and night. I want to travel the world. Put your attention and intention on it, and you can manifest it. You have a slight power inside you to manifest that. But if you take that power and you put it into entering the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram, and you decide, I'm going to become a Buddha, because actually Buddha's teaching was to become the Buddha, not him himself. He's a historic personality and the highest deity of Buddhism. But the idea was to become a bodhisattva, let's say, at least, in the Pure Land. But like I said, when we first started, the first thing I said to you today, when one really, really surrenders it to their life, everything at the feet of his divine grace, the divine grace of Lord Hari, they won't care for anything but the moments in the communion with beloved Lord Hari. They get up every day. They can't wait to start chanting japa. They can't wait to have meditation. Everything. Oh, the sun's out. I'll go sit in the sun and have a meditation on Surya Namaskar, on Lord Hari. Oh, it's raining out. Oh, I'll go sit in the rain and meditate on the beautiful rain and the water. I'll meditate in the air and the vayu and the wind and the sun. I'll meditate on Lord Hari and in the weather. Anyone does this, then the Lord will recognize that devotee's condition, just like the magic that creates when all you're thinking about is, I'm going to make $8,000 a month. I'm doing this. I'm setting my goals. Something recognizes within you that force of intention and manifest. Wayne Dyer was the master of this. He did many classes on this. He really brought it to light. It's been around since the early positive thinkers in America in the early days. But Wayne Dyer was one who really brought it into crystal clarity. But this intention has great magic power, and it is connected with God. But if you take that desire and intention and apply it to entering the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram, then the Lord will recognize that, and he will help you. He will allow you to die to live and move into the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram. This is the words of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, die to live. What does that mean? Everybody heard that. It went in one ear, out the other. It vibrated the canal on one level and out, whoosh, out the other side. Well, what does that mean? Nobody asked because they were afraid, because it says die. That means give up all the hoax and become one with the adhokshaja. Die to live. And what the Lord has told me to tell you means moving into the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram, the divine abode that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati talked about. After passing through the Brahmarandra, passing through into the divine light of Brahman, and passing through that after crossing the river Viraja, crossing over, getting the boatman. When you go there and the boatman wheels over to the thing and you hear the paddle swishing and he says, by whose permission will you cross? And your Gurudev comes and appears in front of you and stands up and says, he may cross. The guardian of devotion, he may cross. And the boatman takes you on, across the river Viraja. Then that's when you're located on the other side. That's where the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram is. And from there, as you lean up against your tombstone, you can hear the howls and shrieks of Lord Nityananda and Mahaprabhu. You can hear his shrieking so loud that it doesn't frighten you, but it's very exciting. And from there, you can do further communion with the Lord. You'll be facilitated on all sides by Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and the advanced practitioners of bhakti, prema bhakti yoga. You will be facilitated, and it is the transition location for continued deeper communion on the way back to Godhead, and you'll be in love forever. Hey, it's all about love. That's what everybody says, the New Agers and the Bhakti Fed. Oh, it's all about love. Well, you got to really understand that. So we're trying to give you a taste of that intensity today. There is clearing in the future. Let's move on. Here we go. So here is a picture of Lord Chaitanya, probably the closest thing we could ever have of a photograph of Lord Chaitanya. I shrink it just a little bit. This was a painting done by an artist under the direct direction of King Prataparudra. Now, if you're a Chaitanya follower from any of the Sampradayas, primarily from ISKCON is where the greatest education was, but if you from there branched out, you're following with some of the other schools or lineages, that's fine. It's the same person, same teaching. We have our authoritative works, which is the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the other works. There's about 5 principal works of Lord Chaitanya. Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita are the primary ones, and then you have 3 or 4 others that were a little bit less primary, but all still very important. So gaze, now you can gaze. I'll raise up the picture a little so you can look at the beautiful face of Lord Chaitanya. This is the closest thing we have of a photograph. Now, apparently the artist was seeing some kind of bluish, white, kind of misty halo around him. Usually an artist, Prataparudra, would not have instructed him, and he wouldn't have gone against Prataparudra, but he would not have painted an aura around. I've thought about this only because that's the way I am. I'm a researcher and I'm an analyst of many different things for my regular ongoing work, but this is a very important picture, and you should realize, and many wonderful paintings were made of Mahaprabhu under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, which are all incredible and beautiful, many, many, many. And we adore all of them. And there's many paintings going back long ago to that time. But the first shock I want to give you, if you haven't seen this picture before, it may be a shock to you. Maybe you don't relate, quote, relate to Mahaprabhu looking this way, but this is what was painted when Mahaprabhu was sitting there by the artist who was sitting right there under the direction of King Prataparudra, who was nearby. So keep that in mind. Beautiful eyes, soaked with tears, etc., etc. So beautiful. Let's move forward a little bit. Speaking of King Prataparudra, here is a carved deity of King Prataparudra, which is an interesting looking character with his crown on, his kingly crown, his smile. Apparently he was a very smiling person, but very tough, because it says here this depiction of Gajapati Prataparudra Dev from the Sarpeshwar temple built during his rule at Balarampur village near Kakhadi. Kakhadi, we've heard of this. Yeah, Kakhadi. This is all part of Goda, or part of Puri, the region around Puri. King Prataparudra ruled that region in there in Puri. His first war as a king when he was just 17 years old. 17 years old, and he becomes king. His father died, he became king, and he had to deal with an invasion from Gauda, which is West Bengal, where Lord Chaitanya was born. Now, interesting timeline here, because his first war was with this Muslim ruler in Gauda. He was 17 years old. Think of the responsibility of this King Prataparudra. Wow. Now, this was in about the period of 1497 to 1500. We know Lord Chaitanya appeared in the 1500s. Mahaprabhu was approximately 15 years old at the time. He was born in 1486 approximately and passed away at 1533. So he only lived about 47, Mahaprabhu lived to, when he passed away after he was in Gambhira, and then he merged into the beloved deity of Tota Gopinath. There's other legends too that he merged in Jagannath, but we accept that he merged in the knee of Tota Gopinath, which was a deity he discovered. It was so dear to his heart that he appointed his most beloved servant, Gadadhar Pandit, who wanted to go to Vrindavan and live with the Goswamis, Rupa and Sanatan. But instead, Mahaprabhu said, no, you stay here at this spot and take care of my beloved deity, Tota Gopinath, which means forest Gopinath. That was the name of the deity that Lord Chaitanya had discovered when they were sitting out in the forest. He started scraping in the dirt while Gadadhar Pandit was reading Shastra to him, and he's scraping in this one spot, and all of a sudden there was the deity of Lord Krishna, Gopinath. And Tota means forest. So Tota Gopinath is the forest Gopinath. And Mahaprabhu would not let Gadadhar Pandit go to Vrindavan, but he said, no, you stay and take care of this deity on my behalf for me. And this Tota Gopinath temple is still there in Puri. I've visited many times. It was usually part of my parikram every day when I'd go to Jagannath Puri, which is the place I visited the most, actually, in India. And always going to Gambhira and Tota Gopinath was part of the parikram, and Alanath Vishnu temple as well, where Lord Chaitanya fell in love with Alanath Vishnu. When Lord Jagannath couldn't be seen, he would go walking out to Brahmagiri, that's where I was initiated. I had a home out in that region out there called Brahmagiri at the Renta Narasingha temple. It's still there. It's out in the jungle. I actually did some efforts when I was there and got it kind of stamped by the government so that it would perpetually be maintained. And they did. You know how they put if you've been to India, they put the white markings on the trees and all that stuff. And that way people can see, oh, this is a government spot. We can't cut the trees down. This temple should be here. And I think they get a stipend, so they're always maintained. So Mahaprabhu was 15 years old at the time in Navadvip, oddly. And then the Muslim, whatever he was called, not a king, he was something else, forget his name. Point is that he invaded the Puri area, or that region of Orissa, and he was successful in driving him out. King Prataparudra was successful at age 17 in organizing and driving him out. But Lord Chaitanya was 15 years old at the time and becoming famous as Nimai Pandit, and as a renowned scholar and teacher. He developed a toll, or a school in Navadvip, and I could do a whole seminar just on Nimai Pandit. I mean, you talk about a rock star. He was a rock star. I can tell you this, when he defeated, no one knew more about Vedic knowledge than Nimai Pandit. People may think, oh, this Sampradaya, that's it. Nobody knew more than Nimai Pandit. His school grew so large and big because of his renowned scholarship. And then when he defeated what's called the Digvijayi in India, a Digvijayi is the supreme #1 top Vedic scholar and leader. And usually what they do once they achieve that position, there's a real conceit surrounding it, obviously. They go around and they travel around to other places. And Navadvip at that time was the center of learning during this whole period. It was as big as Calcutta. Navadvip is as large as Calcutta back then, and it was a very well-known place because you had Kalikata, or Kaligat. Kaligat, Calcutta comes from the word Kaligat, Ma Kali. And that was where this Muslim ruler left from that whole region up there, which was the capital city. And Navadvip was a big school of learning, famous school of learning at that time, where Mahaprabhu had defeated the Digvijayi. And immediately by doing that, he defeated him in debate, in discussion, which was done privately along the Ganga, actually. And the Digvijayi said, I'm defeated. You are Narayan. I'm seeing, you're revealing to me, and I'm seeing you are Lord Narayan. I can't, you are Saraswati. At first, he was questioning, Digvijayi was questioning within himself, he's praying to Mahasaraswati, why have you let this young boy defeat me? Why have you let this young boy defeat me? And Mahasaraswati told him. Mahasaraswati, within the heart of the Digvijayi, said, don't you realize he is Narayan? He can't be defeated. He's the supreme master of all Vedas and Vedic knowledge. Lord Narayan is the source of the Vedas, and Narayan is the reason for all the Vedic knowledge. So he says, you yourself must see that he is Narayan himself. So at that point, I say a rock star, because Nimai Pandit, see, that registers with us regular Americans. His toll expanded so wide and far. He used to sometimes come through town on an elephant, a colored painted elephant. You maybe seen him at the festivals and stuff, riding on an elephant with all his thousands of followers, chanting his name, Nimai Pandit, Nimai Pandit. Just huge, huge things. When he defeated the Digvijayi, it just got so huge and exploded. And he is world famous, or India famous, for being the Digvijai. Most people don't know this about Nimai Pandit. Don't just gloss over that chapter of his life. It was astounding. I mean, we're talking major. And that at that point is when he started chanting. One day he started chanting Gopi, Gopi in the class. This well-known story told, by Srila Prabhupada and other saints in Vaishnava lineage. Gopi, Gopi, Krishna, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe, madly, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Gopi, Gopi, Gopi. Everybody said, what has happened to Nimai Pandit? And the first time it appeared, the deep shock of God appeared. What is called the shock of God appeared in Mahaprabhu, only it's something a little more than the shock of God. But what I call the shock of God for us is going to be a little bit less substantive than this, but it happened, for teaching purposes. Mahaprabhu received the shock of God when he was coming back from his toll. He was all alone, and one student saw him on the road and went up and made obeisances. And he had heard that because a lot of the students were becoming very puzzled by him chanting Radhe Govinda and Gopi Gopi. And he came up to him and he started singing this song. He saw him, made obeisance, "Oh, Nimai Pandit, my master, I'm a student of your school." And he started singing this song. Ram Krishna Bolo Hari Gopal Govindam, Ram Krishna Bolo Hari Gopal Govindam, Ram Krishna Bolo Hari Gopal Govindam, which is a beautiful song, mantra. It's a verse made up of the names of Krishna. Ram, Krishna, Bolo, Govindam, Bolo Hari, Gopal Govindam, Ram, Krishna, Bolo, Hari, Gopal Govindam. And Mahaprabhu, the first time on record, this is from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, fell into what are called sattvika bhavas. His body erupted. He fainted on the ground with tears squirting out his eyes. We don't understand because, he was really crying. No, squirting out like with a syringe, shooting out of the eyes. And he went into convulsions. His body, word was that when this poet's name was Ratnagarbha. He fancied himself as a poet. He's a member of his toll. Obviously, he's a very learned person, but he was a member of Nimai Pandit school. So he thought he would sing this verse to him to show him that, look, I appreciate what you're doing. And Mahaprabhu fell into these convulsions. And it was said in the Sastra, in the Bhagavat, Chaitanya Bhagavat, he says, 50 men could not hold him down. The convulsions were so strong. He couldn't be held down because some of the people saw this going on and they came from the area. What's going on? What's going on? And they tried to hold him down, and 50 men could not hold him down. So insane and intense. When the sattvika, what are called sattvika bhavas, erupted, literally erupted in Mahaprabhu. So our whole teaching of, if you're a follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the whole teaching is about receiving the shock of God. Just by hearing about what I just told you, this story of how the first manifestation of sattvika bhavas appeared in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Such things were never before seen in religious history. You have, in the Christian religion, you have signs of the stigmata where the holes appear in the hands and feet, like Jesus when he's on the cross, and certain saints that enter a certain level of purity, the stigmata will come. And one saint who was a martyr also used to float in the sky when he would get stigmata. And he'd enter such a state of ecstasy that people would say they would actually see light coming out of the room in a form of a small baby, like a baby Jesus was standing right there. And there was many things of him talking to fish. He could talk to the fish. They would all come up. He would stand by the bank of the river and say, "Oh, fish, oh, you darling beloved fish, how are you today?" And all these thousands of fish would come up from the lake and the river and come right up by his feet and be flopping around in the water. And he would preach to them about life and God. So you see what I mean? Shock of God is not exclusive to any particular religion or practice. So that's why I said you can't teach it or even practice it. It has to happen to you. And there is ways to do that, and I can talk to you about sometime next. But remember, we're offering you a free gift. If you'd like to leave a commentary about this program, then Chintamani can contact you through the internet. It's a hard copy of this gift I want to send you. It's called Jagat Prabhu, Friends of the World. Jagat Prabhu. It's a nice magazine, which basically has all these teachings that I've given you here today, plus additional teachings from Rishabdev Avadhut, which is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and some teachings also about the extraterrestrials that I talked about, and Srila Prabhupada, words of Srila Prabhupada. It's not a preaching magazine. So it's only for those people who are really deeply serious of doing self-inquiry and finding out, am I living in the hoax or the adhoxaja? That's the nature of self-inquiry, is this one thing, hoax or adhoxaja? Look at this. Here's another painting by King Prataparudra of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Here's Lord Chaitanya, here's Lord Nityananda. Haridas Thakur, look at Haridas Thakur in his cowpeen, raising his hands, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, but standing off the platform. He always maintained that I'm so unqualified. He wouldn't sit on this platform. And here's King Prataparudra, the great king, who just recently had defeated this army from West Bengal. Can you believe it? From Bengal, from Navadvip. They're not from Navadvip, but the invaders came from there and here's King Prataparudra. So humble is King Prataparudra that he's telling the artist, he's actually laying here and he's telling the artist to paint this picture. And for the picture, he's laying in Dandavat Pranams. Remember I told you I'd talk about Dandavat Pranams later. Well, there they are. There's King Prataparudra in a picture, painted, authorized and commanded by him, by this artist to paint this picture. They're doing Hari Kirtan. This seems to be a madanga. I don't think it's a harmonium. I don't think harmoniums were invented yet, but the strange box-like shape it in, maybe it's some kind of instrument like a harmonium. Not important. It's a side subject. But you can see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here and his associates, Haridas Thakur, standing off the platform. And this has to be a real peacock because they didn't make metal peacocks. You know, now you can probably pay $1,500 to get a beautiful colored metal peacock made like that. But this is supposedly a real peacock showed up here, or at least that's what the impression of the picture is. And I assume this is also was taken in King Prataparudra's, some area of his compound, because you can see the luxurious kind of fence coverings here where he was putting Mahaprabhu up in the garden. They said he stayed in his garden there. So that's pretty interesting. If you haven't seen that, well, there you go. More exciting things, more shocks to take in. Now, this is my favorite one. This is when Mahaprabhu went to the Alanath temple. He used to go there when Jagannath would, quote, catch a cold. There's a period where Jagannath catches a cold. It's just kind of a humorous, Jagannath's so humorous. That's why he's always, he's always smiling like this. Jai Jagannath, Bhava tu me. Mahaprabhu went out to the Alanath temple. You can see here, now this nice Mataji, this Pujari's instructing her, put here, he's helping her, you know, to make the offering. I was told when I went there many times, these were knee prints of Mahaprabhu. This one and this one, like it, he collapsed. What happened was when he went there and saw Alanath, he collapsed and fainted because the Sattvika Bhavas came up again. He was so in shock seeing the beauty of Alanath. And the collapse created, they melted the stone, his knees, and then he fell forward and his elbows hit the cement. Then he collapsed and the elbows are up here. This is what I was told by the Panda. So being the kind of character I am, I couldn't do the actual measuring thing. They probably wouldn't have minded if you give them some money. You know how that goes. You've been to India before, or actually any country outside, you know, money talks, you know how that goes. But here too, but I'm saying a couple rupees, I could have got my measuring stick, but I just measured it by, on this side, by walking past. You like using your feet, figuring they're like 10 inches or whatever. It wasn't hard to do, but I saw that because in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya, you may not know this, he's described as being 7 foot 6 feet tall. They're giving it in cubits, but he's actually 7 foot 6 tall, approximately 7 feet 6. And most importantly, he's a very rare form of a human being, usually reserved for a great avadhut or a divine being, what's called Ajanabahu, 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 which means his arms extended down to his knees, arms extended to the knees, Ajanabahu. So Ajanabahu Mahaprabhu, who is rarely depicted like that in the pictures, but I do have a picture I want to show you of that, rarely depicted that way for some reason. Even Srila Prabhupada and the whole tradition generally doesn't depict him that way because I think people are just, you know how they are. They think, oh, it's kind of freakish that he has such long arms. But actually, for those who are realized Vedic knowledge, oh, this is a divine manifestation. We welcome it. And it's talked about in the scriptures very little, but it's definitely there. But this Pujari showed me knees and elbows. So if you measure from knees to elbow in a collapsed position, and at that time he may have been slightly bent over still, you can definitely see from going to this pilgrimage spot and offering some flowers onto the spots where Mahaprabhu's body was so hot from the Sattvika bhavas, it melted the stone, that indeed he was 7'6" or over 7 feet. Now, just for fun, I'm going to show you a picture of a great, great saint who was Ajahn Bahu. It's very hard to find. This saint is known as Alkalkat Swami. Alkalkat Swami lived in Maharashtra and was very, very famous, very, very intense Avadhut, had magic powers and amazing, I call it magic because we don't usually use the word, but I'm just saying where people would come to him, he'd immediately know what they're thinking. He could read their past 3 lives and whatever they wanted would come to him. He's kind of unusual character. He wore traditional Tulsi and Vaishnav tilak, but he lived in, like I said, in Alkalkat is a city or a region in Maharashtra. You can look him up, but he was so famous. This was actual photo taken in the late 1890s because the British had come in and what I call invaded India. They were just following the footsteps, and this is a whole other story. They're just following the footsteps of the Portuguese who invaded Goa. And that's a whole seminar itself. It's unbelievable, the disgusting stuff that went on with that. But anyway, so I'm just saying, so with the British in the 1890, which is more modern areas, because the Goa invasion was back 100 years and up to during the time, just right before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it all kind of, but it went on for 200 years, 1400s. Goa was invaded by these jerks from Portugal. Anyway, so it's all saying I don't want to get into it. I'll start getting intensely upset about it. The Indians, what they've gone through over these Europeans and Westerners, it's unbelievable. But anyway, Ajahn Bahu, Alkalkat Maharaj Ki Jai. You can see he's really Ajahn Bahu because his arms hang down to his knees. You can see his hands, and he's not like sticking the fingers out. He's just casually letting his arm flop and extending to the knees. If he pressed it against his body and extended the fingers, it'd probably come down almost closer towards his calf. This is a real picture of a great sadhu, a saint, a siddha, Ajahn Bahu, Alkalkat Maharaj Ki Jai. So you can get his blessings. He's giving us an example. Now I put another picture of him here so you can see him in a different form to show you the proof that you can see if you sit down on the floor right now in a, like a, not a lotus posture, but just sit down with your legs crossed on a floor and you put this apparently is his right arm. You put your right arm back behind your hip. You're a normal person will maybe just come up halfway to the thigh, but you can see his arms extending over the knee, well over the knee, and then he's making mudra, special mudra with his hand, which is way off the knee and down here. But if you try this later, if you don't believe me, you'll see that this second picture I'm showing you, these aren't fakes, these are real photos, because what I was going to say, when Kodak came to India, Kodak Film Company, they had those big cameras. Remember you see when they put the cloth over that stands up on a tripod and they put the cloth over and they wind it, or I don't know what they do. They go, okay, hold on, and then poof, and it explodes and then you get the picture. So they had Kodak then, and he was so famous in India, Ajahn Bahu, Alkalkat Maharaj, that they wanted to take pictures of him, and they appeared in major India magazines throughout India, because India's always had a love for saints and everything like that. So because of the British coming, Kodak came, they had the opportunity to take pictures of Alkalkat Maharaj. And again, wearing tulasi around the neck and Vaishnav tilak. Sadhus and avadhuts are all of different natures. Some no tilak, some 3-line. They can come and appear in any form they want. It's just an appearance in a particular type of body. And in his case was honoring the Vaishnav tradition, although he was Avadhut, which is like Lord Nityananda is not a Vaishnava. You can't say, oh, Lord Nityananda, he's a Vaishnava. Well, he's an Avadhut. Yeah, he's a Vaishnava, but he's an Avadhut. So, it's just like Jesus wasn't a Christian. Think about it. I told this couple once was trying to preach me at a restaurant. I was at this health food restaurant, people chit-chatting and hanging around. That's fine. And I'm trying to explain some of these things to him on a light scale that I know about Christianity because I've done a lot of research on it. And I said, well, Jesus wasn't a Christian. And at first they went into shock because they were like all into this. He had his cell phone out and he was showing me verses from the Bible and everything, which I appreciate. I like the Bible. Bhaktivinoda Thakur loved the Bible too, and he loved Jesus. And so did Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Hey, Father and the Son, Father to Son, Son to Father, Father to Son are one. This is what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati taught us. That type of relationship is very much appreciated by Vaishnavas, that God is taking the form of the Son. There's a relationship, and he's appreciating him as the Father. Anyway, so here's Mahaprabhu, very hard to find pictures, but I saved this one from some time ago, where he appears to be at least, well, first of all, you see him leaping way off the ground, which is amazing. You can see from the painting that he's very tall. He's not, a lot of times they paint him like everybody else's same height, like an ordinary sort of golden hued personality. And that's okay. That's up to the sadhu who's guiding the artist. If they're just painting it on their own, then whatever. And you can see, it looks to me like he's Ajahn Bahu, or at least depicted that way. If this picture stopped all of a sudden and stood up straight, you'd see he's very tall, maybe 7 foot or more, and the arms hang down to the knees. So possibly like Ajahn Bahu, Alkalkat Maharaj. And the only reason I'm showing you this is to introduce you to him, to show you that this is a real photograph of someone who is Ajahn Bahu as Mahaprabhu was. So now, when you're meditating on Lord Chaitanya, this is what I'd like you to do. This will help. It's all up to you. It's all up to your desire. We're getting close to wrapping up the seminar here. If you meditate and you think about Lord Chaitanya and Kirtan going Hari Bol, putting his arms above his head, and you can sit and visualize this in front of in your house, where you're sitting in your meditation room or in your house. You'll need a tall ceiling to visualize this. But the stretch of Mahaprabhu raising his arms, Hari Bol, that stretch down to his knees, that from his feet to that stretch is probably a 13 to 14 foot stretch of a golden divine form, a golden divine being with a 13 to 14 foot stretch from his feet to his hands if he's standing. So this is a little lesson for you as we're closing up the seminar. To increase your communion with Lord Hari and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is essentially the same, get this picture in your mind. It's absolutely 100% true. If you didn't know this and you're all flustered and in shock, well, good. Here's the first lesson in the shock of Godhead. Take apart some of the things you thought to be one way, but they're not. This is what it's very difficult. How to take apart things you thought the world was this way or something was this way. You thought the pandemic was real and is really scary, and somebody like me comes and says, no, it's all 100% fake. And then I prove it to you like we did on the last seminar we did on YouTube. You're going to get mad because depending on how thick that ahankar wall is, depending on how covered over and sealed the heart is. But once you start loosening up and cracking that seal, you'll experience less pain when the ahankar is challenged with its realizations that are false, but was firmly locked on thinking they were true. So if you just sit, this is the first step to receiving the shock of God, especially if you're a Chaitanya Vaishnava. Sit and gaze at Gaura Hari standing in your room there. You can do it. Picture his lotus feet. Make a prayer to his lotus feet, but picture him. He's standing there with his arms dropping down to his side like Ajahn Bahu, Alcalcott looks very similar. He was about the same height too. And he's standing, and then he raises his arms up and says, Haribol, Haribol. And the arms are the whole stretch from the feet to the tips of the fingers reaching out saying Haribol is about a 14-foot stretch. Now, if you want to get scientific, you can take one of those tapes, you know, and put a little marker on your wall, a piece of tape or something, like a little colored piece of tape or something. That's 14 feet. And picture that form standing there with arms and look and gaze at the golden form. The total main part of the container, the body, is 7'6". And then with these arms that reach the knees, stretching up over the head, the whole thing is like 14 feet stretch. And gaze at Mahaprabhu and say, Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Brindam. This is the prayer, Lord Chaitanya and his divine associates. So if you picture that and you hold your gaze on it while you're doing japa, you can do japa rather than looking at your cell phone and all that horrifying stuff like that. Don't look at your cell phone while you're doing japa. Just sit. Prabhupada just say, sit tight and chant Hare Krishna. If I can just get you to sit tightly and chant Hare Krishna. What he meant was, because he used to do this, sometimes you're pacing and strolling, that's good exercise, etc. But at least once a day, sit down tightly and do half your rounds. For me, that's 16 or more. I've done them all at that. Just sit down in one position. Don't fidget. Don't move. Go out in your backyard if it'll help you. Don't leave the phone. Don't bring the damn phone out there. Just forget that phone. Turn everything off and just sit out there in one position. Don't move. Don't fidget and chant Hare Krishna. Do your rounds. All the whole round, because the general rule in yoga, you may or may not know this, but the general rule amongst yogis in Himalayas, everywhere else is you sit down and do your quota of rounds that you've decided. Whether yogis, because everyone chants japa, that's part of the traditional practice of practically any type of yoga. Puja, japa, meditation, fasting, celibacy, and vegetarian eating. That's the complete picture. Most people, you lose half the audience at vegetarian, which is, and then they of course try to do a workaround like all these criminal fake yogis and so-called bhakti yogis. Oh, well, I still eat chicken and fish. I'm a vegetarian, but I still eat a little bit of fish. You're not a vegetarian. Snap out of it. The ahankar is a real, that's why we call it the bastard. It's a real bastard. It will take you down. It will take you down unless you destroy the bastard. You have to destroy the bastard. Beware of the witch. Destroy the bastard. That was today's lesson ultimately. But the idea is to move into, once that bastard is destroyed, you'll become all love. The seal of the heart will snap open, as Guru Maharaj used to say. The divine love will flow through your body and start electrifying all of your nadis, your 72,000 yogic nadis in the body, and you'll start gradually becoming all love. And then you'll be able to approach the graveyard of Sat Chit Ananda Sundaram. So we wish you all love and beauty in your life, and I hope this teaching has made some good sense to you and made some good information, and I hope it helps you. And may all your dreams come true forever and ever. Every single dream, every wish you have, every goal you set, may they all come true forever. Jai Jagannath.